Okay, moving on to Chapter 6, we're on Section 4, Emotional Development. Now, talking about emotional development in infants is difficult, at least in the beginning, because emotion, we're defining as a state of feeling. There's physiological components, there's situational components, and there's cognitive components. But it's unclear how many emotions a baby has. Now, we do know that if we look, at facial expressions, is it just a reflex, or is it something that's an actual indicator of emotions? We know that facial expressions do seem to be universal. We know that infants seem to show only a few emotions during the first few months of life, but as they developed, by the end of the first year, emotions seem to be important, and emotional expression seems to increase, emotional development seems to increase. We do know that they kind of have two basic states in infancy: positive attraction to pleasant stimulus and withdrawal from aversive stimulation. We do know that they'll smile, and they will laugh. So those are the kinds of emotions that we often see in infants. We also know that emotional development is linked to cognitive development and also linked, obviously, to social experiences. Now, how do emotions development and how do emotional development, and patterns of attachment work? Well, a study by Konchaska, again using the strange situation, looked at patterns of attachment, and this was a longitudinal study of 112 children at ages 9, 14, 22, and 33 months. All right, so from infancy to all through infancy, and then a little bit into toddlerhood. And they studied the development of fear, anger, and joy. And what they found, that they found differences in emotional development were first related to attachment at the age of 14 months. Resistant children were often most fearful, and they frequently responded to distress, even in episodes that were meant to make them happy, meant to, what your book calls, evoke joy. When they were assessed over time, it was becoming apparent that those securely attached kids were becoming significantly less angry, and the negative emotions of insecurely attached kids were rising. Avoidant children grew more fearful, and resistant children grew less joyful. At 33 months of age, those securely attached kids were less likely to show fear and anger, even when they were exposed to situations that were meant to elicit those emotions. So, securely attached kids seem to be less affected by things that were supposed to elicit fear and anger, while showing joy when appropriate, and kind of the opposite for those insecurely attached infants and avoiding kids. They grew more fearful, and they showed an increase in negative emotion. Now, one of the big things that happens during infancy is stranger anxiety. Now, stranger anxiety is normal. It's a normal developmental, I won't say milestone, but process. Most infants it develops in, appears at about 6 to 9 months, peaks at 9 to 12 months of age, and declines in the second year. And you can see some of the things that come along with that stranger anxiety: crying, whimpering, looking afraid, crawling away, trying to get away from that stranger. So just generally unhappiness and trying to move away. Okay, one of the things that happens when it comes to emotional development, and something we want to talk about, is this concept called social referencing. Now, social referencing is the idea is that we use another person's situation to form or another person's reaction to a situation or another person's perception of the situation to help us figure out how we're going to view it, how we're going to react to it. Infants display this ability as early as 6 months. So they're regularly using caregivers' facial expressions, tone of voice, on clues as to how to respond. So you've probably seen various times before where, let's say you have a little one and the little one hurts himself or herself. And mom or dad run to them and, are you okay? Are you all right? Oh my goodness, did you hurt yourself? Just sort of acting in that way. And many times the infant or the child will get upset. Same kind of thing can happen, except this time the caregiver may be like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry, you're fine. Pick yourself up. Let's go. It'll be fine. Not making a big deal out of it, not overreacting, not giving clues that something bad has happened. And many times infants and children will respond in the same way. Oh, no big deal. Pick yourself up. Dust yourself off. Start again. Now, there's some certain requirements for social referencing, and those include being able to look at another older individual when the situation is ambiguous, something that we haven't experienced before, associating that person's response with the unfamiliar situation, and being able to regulate our own emotions well enough to align it with that of the older individual. Now, we also have a concept that comes into play here where that is called emotional regulation. Now, emotional regulation is related to social referencing. The ways in which, and these are ways in which young children control their own emotions. Now, caregivers can help infants learn to regulate their emotions. Two-way communication system develops that signals the infant signals the caregiver that help is needed, and the caregiver responds. Now, your book has a great little example. It says, 13-month-old playing with a large plastic bottle attempted to unscrew the cover, but could not. Fretting for a short time, she initiated eye contact with her mother and held out the jar. As her mother took it to unscrew the cover, the infant ceased fretting. All right, so that's emotional regulation. Now, this is children of secure mothers are more likely to be secure themselves, more likely to be able to regulate their own emotions in a positive manner. And later on, adolescents who were secure as infants were more capable of regulating their emotions and interacting cooperatively with their friends than those who weren't. So emotional regulation starts off early and seems to continue at least, pardon me, up until adolescence.